Our next presentation is Maintenance and Design of Bioretention and Other Green Stormwater Infrastructure by Nicholas Ajluni. Nicholas Ajluni has worked for the City of San Jose Environmental Services Department for 8 years in various positions related to water resources management. Over the last 4 years, Nick has developed the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Operations and Maintenance Inspection Program for the City of San Jose. Nick holds both a Bachelor and a Master of Science degree in Environmental Studies from San Jose State University, as well as certifications as Certified Erosion, Sediment, and Stormwater Inspector, Qualified SWPPP Practitioner, and is a Bay-friendly qualified professional. Please welcome Nicholas Ajluni.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. You touched on kind of the C3 requirements, stormwater requirements, and the regulatory compliance aspect of that. So that's something we'll be looking into, kind of building up that certification process. So today, again, we talk about maintenance and design of bioretention and other green stormwater infrastructure. This is a really quickly growing field, so I'm hoping that you'll get something out of this presentation, and I'm also hoping that I get some questions so I can bring those back and kind of build onto our program. As an overview of what we'll be talking about today, we're going to be talking about the introduction to green stormwater infrastructure, the drivers behind green stormwater infrastructure, the standard designs of different types of GSI, maintenance guidance, and then I have some useful resources, and then we're going to have time for questions at the end. Green stormwater infrastructure, or GSI, uses low-impact development designs to integrate our infrastructure into the natural environment. It's required on most new and redevelopment projects throughout California. And green stormwater infrastructure is an approach to stormwater management that uses natural systems to clean and control stormwater. It better mimics nature, and it helps improve water quality in our streams and bay. It also reduces flooding in streams and slowing or reducing our stormwater flows going into the bay and into our streams. It creates urban greening and habitat in our communities, and it can also be incorporated into our traffic calming and complete streets projects, such as the one that's up on the screen. So again, some of the reasons behind why we do green stormwater infrastructure. You can see on the left, there's a severely eroded stream, and that was caused by a change in the hydrology of the watershed due to increased urbanization in the watershed and increased runoff and peak flows in the creek. GSI is designed to slow down and reduce the amount of runoff going into our local waterways, and it also removes a lot of common pollutants that Sarah alluded to, such as hydrocarbons, litter, trash, sediment, heavy metals, stuff like that. And a properly functioning GSI installation is really integrated into the natural environment in our community and provides many of the benefits that I've talked about. So for the regulatory drivers of GSI, Provision C3 of the San Francisco Bay Regional Municipal Stormwater MPDS permit, or the MRP for short, requires GSI installations on most new and redevelopment projects. The MRP regulates the 9-county Bay Area and most of the cities in the 9-county Bay Area. There's 76 co-permittees, and there's 22 provisions or different regulations in it that it regulates, including GSI through Provision C3. In Santa Clara County, we have the SCVWD partnership, or the Santa Clara Valley Urban Runoff Pollution Prevention Program. That is a partnership between 15 local jurisdictions, and it helps provide consistency and guidance on the design and maintenance of GSI and all the other provisions that are included in our stormwater permit. And SCVWD developed the C3 handbook several years ago to help with design and maintenance of GSI, and that was in partnership with all the other agencies, which San Jose, that I work for, is the largest co-permittee in SCVWD. In San Jose, there's currently about 2,500 GSI installations, and it's spread out at about 500 different sites throughout the city. Soon, we're going to have over 3,000. There are hundreds of projects currently under construction that have GSI. So our workload as the regulator for those GSI is growing exponentially. And these are located on private development sites, public projects, and the city has grant-funded projects as well that we're building for green streets, stuff like that. So some of the types of GSI, the most common types, I should say, are bioretention and flow-through planters, tree well filter systems, detention basins, and green roofs. Primarily, I'm going to be talking about bioretention and flow-through planters because those are by far the most common types found in this area. So again, bioretention and flow-through planters are the most common type. They're also known as rain gardens. They're often called bioswales. Throughout the last 10, 15 years or so, the design has kind of changed, so the names have also changed along with the designs. And when doing routine maintenance on the landscapes, these require special consideration because there are special requirements for ensuring that these are properly maintained. They're landscape-based systems that allow for ponding, infiltration, absorption, and evapotranspiration. And again, they help slow and clean our stormwater runoff. Here's two examples of well-installed and well-maintained bioretention systems. One is a green street that the city of San Jose built, and one is at a local college. So for the design of bioretention areas, in general, they require an appropriate plant species to be planted. The plants should be planted based on the hydrozone, meaning there's going to be a lot of standing water in the basin, so plants that can tolerate having wet feet should be selected for those areas. The bank areas can sometimes have pretty soggy soil, but it's also well-draining soil. So plants should be selected based on those water requirements. And then the upland areas tend to stay dry, so there's kind of a larger palette of plants you can select from. And all these plants, or the plants that we consider are appropriate, are listed in Appendix D of the Suburb C3 handbook. I think there's about 400 plant species listed on there. Most of them are California natives, but there are also non-native plants on there that have to meet some requirements that I'll go over in a few minutes. All these systems also require 3 inches of compost and arbor mulch to help improve soil health, prevent erosion, retain moisture, suppress weeds, and help filter out pollutants. And then cobble or another measure of flow dissipation is needed at all inlets, downspouts, and overflows to prevent erosion and help capture sediment when it comes into the system, and to also capture litter. What makes bioretention areas special is that they're designed to have 18 inches specially formulated bioretention soil mix, or biotreatment soil mix, or BSM for short. And that ensures that the system has proper drainage and actually treats the runoff as it goes into it. They're also, the standard design is for them to have a minimum of 6 inches of ponding. So the water flows in there, it ponds based on sizing of the site, sizing calculation that's required in the design. And that's to ensure that it's slowing water, letting pollutants settle out before it infiltrates or goes through a underdrain and then out to the storm system. If you were doing maintenance out in the field, not sure if the site has bioretention areas or other GSI, some of the things that you can look for are if it's a newer site, has a large parking lot, something like that, usually there's going to be a curb cut in the curbs going into planters. There's going to be overflows in the landscape areas that are usually elevated 6 inches or so to allow for ponding. They're typically going to have a PVC clean out, so you can clean the underdrain that's underneath the system. And they're also going to be depressed areas that are 6 to 12 inches deep. Several slides. Okay, so again, the BSM or biotreatment soil mix is a kind of specially certified or specially formulated soil mix that's called out, the design specifications of that are called out in Appendix C of the SCVWD C3 handbook. And it's an engineered soil made up of 60 to 70% fine sand and 30 to 40% compost. And it requires allows an infiltration rate of 5 to 10 inches per hour. So if water goes in and it infiltrates very quickly, passing through the system. And that's to help meter the water going out into our storm system. And it's designed to be very well draining again and support vigorous plant growth in the system. The next type of GSI are tree well filters. It often uses BSM that's similar to what's in bioretention areas, but it can be a proprietary blend of soil that has an even higher infiltration rate because you have a smaller surface area to get the water to infiltrate into. And then it typically uses a tree or a shrub to help treat the water and reduce flows through evapotranspiration. These aren't typically permitted anymore unless there's special site requirements that are met. Usually higher density sites will be allowed to have tree well filters in them. The species of trees that are selected or shrubs that are selected in these systems usually need to be able to handle inundation periodically, and they can need to be able to, they're generally smaller species of trees and shrubs that can handle being grown in basically a 4-foot by 4-foot box. Some of the common trees that we find are crepe myrtles, strawberry trees, and redbuds. Those are what we typically see installed in San Jose in this area. Here's an example of 2 tree well filters side by side, have a catch basin in the middle so they can handle really high flows during heavy rains. Detention basins are more regional, larger GSI features that are installed on larger projects and kind of regional projects for like an entire neighborhood, for example. And they're typically partnered with a treatment system such as a large bioretention area. And a lot of times they're installed in parks. We have quite a few in our city parks or other large open spaces. And these are hydromodification systems that are intended to reduce stormwater flows and match the pre-development flows in our waterways. And these help collect sediment and slow water going into our waterways as well. The last type that I'm going to talk about are green roofs. These are not very common in the South Bay area yet. That may change. They have a lot of the same benefits as bioretention areas. They reduce and filter out pollutants from stormwater and reduce heat flows. They also have a lot of other benefits to the buildings, such as reducing energy costs for the buildings, reducing our urban heat island effect in our cities, and are also a great way to provide grading in our communities. So next, I'm going to be talking about maintenance of GSI. San Jose is currently developing a maintenance field guide for use in San Jose, and that's going to help guide maintenance activities to ensure proper function of GSI installations in the city. And it's also going to help make sure sites are staying in compliance with the requirements in C3 and provision C3 of the permit to properly maintain these systems. It's going to be a living document that's going to be periodically updated, and it will be available sometime this spring, so very soon. We're kind of in the final stages of developing it. And it's going to provide guidance, again, with checklists that site superintendents or supervisors can use to ensure everything's being maintained properly. It calls out what our maintenance standards are, so making sure that they're actually in compliance with the regulations. Then it's going to have standard guidance on how to properly maintain these systems and helpful resources for landscape professionals to use if they need a little more information. This is going to be tied directly into our enforcement program. So basically, if landscape professionals and larger facilities are following the guidance in this document, they will not be out of compliance with the municipal regional stormwater permit. And one of the highlights of this that we have found through our inspections and our experience is that a lot of people do not know how to properly maintain these systems, so they kind of fall into disrepair, and they're extremely costly to go back and rehab back to what we require after the fact. So ensuring everyone knows how to properly maintain them will prevent sites from having to spend that large amount of money. So some of the, now I'm going to highlight the plant communities in bioretention areas. Again, the approved plant list or the recommended plants are in the SCVWD C3 handbook, Appendix D. If there's a plant species that a site wants to plant that's not on that list, if it's approved by a landscape architect and meets the main requirements of the Appendix D plant list, they're typically okay for installation. And that's going to be, the plants need to be drought tolerant. They should be able to handle periodic inundation. They're perennial and they can't be invasive species. If replanting, again, you want to pick species by hydrozone or plant species based on the water needs. And again, that's because plants in the basin are going to have 6 inches of standing water surrounding them during the winter for periodic times after rains. Usually they drain within 3 days, so if they can handle that, they should be fine. That being said, the BSM or biotreatment soil mix is highly permeable again, so you also need plants that can do well in very low draining soils. And we want to try to encourage plant diversity for overall ecological health. We don't require that during our enforcement, but we want to see that as much as possible. If people have to replant their systems, we're going to recommend that they have a diverse plant palette. That being said, some of the plants commonly found in these systems are very readily available at local nurseries. So if people want to use deer grass throughout their system or contrapetalum, something like that, those are readily available. And we also want to promote native plants and support pollinators as much as possible in these systems. So for general plant maintenance, we found that having kind of a less manicured, more natural plant growth pattern is beneficial for these systems. If you are going to prune in these systems, you want to prune based on plant needs and functionality of the system. Some light pruning or deadheading can be done and is usually beneficial for a lot of these species. But a lot of these species also self-mulch, and that added mulch into our system and nutrients being cycled back into the system is beneficial for these systems. These are very drought, they're required to be drought tolerant systems, so a lot of the plant species planted have to be drought tolerant. But again, they're planted in this very sandy soil. So using a smart irrigation controller to maintain proper amount of moisture in the soil is recommended to ensure that the plants can survive the dry season. We have 8 or 9 months where there's no rain. So supplemental irrigation might be required on some of these species. Many of the California native plants are adapted to having relatively poor soil quality, poor soil conditions. So we found that adding fertilizers can actually kill some of the plants. So we do not recommend adding fertilizers. In no cases can synthetic fertilizers be used in these systems. The whole point of GSI is to remove those nutrients from our waterways. So if fertilizers are going to be used, we recommend organic fertilizers and very limited amount of those fertilizers. And again, when replanting these systems, what we look for as far as plant spacing goes is we want the plants to be approximately touching or close to it at maturity. So if you have chondropetalum, you can see it on the screen, they typically grow to be about 4 or 5 feet wide. So we want those to be approximately touching, so you plant them 4 or 5 feet on center. And that's usually after the design phase, after the landscape plans are finalized. If there's going to be a change when we're doing our operation or maintenance inspections, and they need to replant, they can plant other species as long as they're following that guidance. And again, some of the plants can be pruned while others will fail or could fail if they are overpruned. Overpruning promotes weeds, pests, and disease in these systems. Example, deer grass can thrive if it's pruned or not. We would recommend not pruning it, but if you are going to prune it, you want to cut it back to about 6 inches or so in winter. The UC Master Gardener's website has great information on the proper pruning techniques for a lot of these species. You can also dethatch deer grass, which is a very common plant, using your hands or a rake as needed. What you don't want is a plant to look like the one on the upper right-hand corner, which is deer grass that has been scalped. When pruning, you can also graft it. We recommend grass cycle and use the soil and try to make some compost with it, or use the cuttings to make compost and use it as mulch in your basins. Or you can remove it entirely from the system. We recommend using a drop cloth or something to collect those clippings if you're going to remove them, just so you are preventing seeds and stuff from spreading throughout the system, especially if you're weeding. Here's an example in the middle of a well-manicured bioretention area that is along a driveway. The contrapetalum in there tends to grow quite long, so you'll have a lot of stands going into the driveway. So if you're gonna, the site was manicuring it quite well and just keeping it into the planted area. That being said, contrapetalum or giant paintbrush tends to die if it's pruned. So sometimes it comes back like one in the lower right hand corner, but we've seen a lot of sites that do a hard pruning and the entire planting fails. So we don't recommend pruning contrapetalum. When replanting these systems, you also want the right plant in the right place, which I think all landscape architects can agree with. Some of these species get quite really quite large, and we found that they block irrigation systems, block curb cuts and inlets, and they also block the overflows. So some pruning is needed if there are very large plants planted, because we don't want to cause flooding or anything in the parking lot or in the system itself. Again, there are a lot of resources available for knowing how to properly prune these plants that we're working with a lot of landscape professionals to try to get that message out, because we're finding a lot of scalped deer grass throughout the city. So one of the big issues that we run into with bioretention areas are weeds. That's probably the most common way we see bioretention areas fail, is that they just get completely infested with weeds. And usually this is caused by a lack of mulch being applied to the system and no maintenance activities to remove weeds when they start popping up. Weeds need to be removed by hand or suppressed with a thick layer of mulch. You can't use pesticides or herbicides in these systems. Again, the whole point of the system is to remove those types of pollutants from our waterways. Luckily, BSN is extremely soft. It's pretty much sand and compost, so you can pull most of the weeds out. And again, you want to use like a drop cloth or something. We've seen sites that weeded while the weeds were going to seed, and they just spread weeds throughout the entire system. And then we come back to do a follow-up inspection 2 weeks later after a rain, and the whole thing's covered in weeds again. So that can be very time-consuming and very expensive for property managers or property owners to deal with. So we want to make sure everyone gets that message when we're requiring weeding. Again, can't use pesticides or herbicides in these systems. Natural weed prevention or removal prevention needs to include hand removal and mulch. And we want to ensure that invasives are not taking over these systems. These are generally disturbed soils when they're first installed, so a lot of invasives thrive in that type of environment. You can see we found a very large pampas grass stand in one of our bioretention areas at the city park that was very interesting watching people try to remove that. And then we see English ivy, other species take over systems very quickly. And you can see this is another park that was taken over by weeds after flooding a couple years ago. One of the big issues that we run into is people not knowing what type of mulch to use. There's kind of conflicting information on that, so we're trying to standardize that. Really want to use 3 inches of undyed kind of natural arbor mulch. If you go to a lot of the landscape suppliers, that means a lot of different things. So we're generally, if it's arbor mulch and it's not dyed, it's typically acceptable. We want to minimize floating as much as possible. Wood floats for the most part. So having something with a lot of different size pieces that kind of interlock together is important to prevent floating. The mulch is required to help prevent weeds and erosion, capture sediment. And it decomposes and adds needed nutrients into the systems and retains moisture. It's required by our new state regulations. It also promotes microorganism growth and soil health. Using the correct type of mulch is critical to ensure these systems are properly functioning. What we don't want with mulch is microbarks. This is another park that just installed this bark mulch, and it all floated away after the first rain. Also, gorilla hair tends to clog the system. It has a lot of fines in it, so it will clog the VSM and not allow for proper infiltration. We also find a lot of sites that the C3 handbook currently says rock mulch or cobble mulch is okay. We find that that is a very quick way to make bioretention area fail. So we are no longer allowing rock mulch or cobble mulch to be used, unless like pea gravel is okay, but cobble, like the one on the bottom, plants aren't going to grow through that, and it provides no services to the system. Natural mulch, wood mulch is going to be bringing nutrients back into the system to help our soils. Within a couple of years, the compost in the VSM tends to be used up, so that it basically just has sand. So applying mulch, wood mulch, natural mulches is going to improve soil health overall. Also, the cobble tends to compact soil and prevent infiltration as well. When doing routine maintenance, we also don't recommend using leaf blowers because that's also a very quick way to get rid of your mulch. And a lot of neighbors don't like that. Again, soil health is critically important in maintaining the health of bioretention areas. And it's very sandy soil, so it's generally poor quality soil after the compost in the soil starts to be used up. So adding a thin layer of compost every couple of years and maintaining a 3-inch mulch layer is going to help promote soil health and plant health and retain moisture for plants. Removing sediments, if a lot of sediment is settling on top of the basin, you want to scrape that off because that will prevent infiltration as well. We don't want standing water in these systems for more than 72 hours because then it becomes a vector control issue. We've seen all kinds of stuff in these systems, but mosquitoes tend to thrive in these systems if they're not infiltrating properly. And again, can't add any synthetic fertilizers because it kill California natives, and you're adding fertilizer directly into our soil. Maintaining cobble or flow dissipation at all the curb cuts, inlets, outlets, and overflows and downspouts is critical to prevent erosion. See on the photo on the left is properly installed cobble. Actually, it's not enough cobble. It needs to extend past the curb cuts about 6 inches on the other side. But that's to prevent erosion going into the system. And you can see the results of not having cobble. You can quickly destroy the system because it's very light and fluffy soil that will wash away very quickly. The cobble needs to be periodically cleaned, so as it fills with sediment. So we recommend putting geotextile fabric or something underneath the cobble so you can easily pick it up, remove the sediment, and put the cobble back down. And that needs to happen periodically, usually every couple of years, depending on sediment loading of the site. Litter and debris is also a big issue with sites. They're designed to capture litter and debris. So we want to keep the litter and debris out of the creeks, and we want to keep it from blocking our inlets and overflows. So manually removing trash and litter and properly disposing of it is important. Again, don't want to use blowers because you'll get rid of your mulch very quickly. Leaf litter is a common source of flooding as it tends to block overflows. That's more of an issue on bioswales and stuff where the overflow grate is flush with the ground. But lightly raking and removing the litter, or even compost it on site and use it, grind it and use it on site as a source of nutrients can work. Another issue is foot traffic and soil compaction. These systems are often installed in industrial areas, commercial areas where you have commercial pedestrian traffic walking back and forth because people don't want to walk around the parking lot to go to the store that they want to go to. So if that's the case, we recommend using small ornamental fences. We have a lot of sites installing small fences to prevent people from walking in and out of the basins. You can see the top and bottom photo are the same basin before and after a fence was installed. It's a little bit better after the fence. There's still a little work that needs to be done, but it's way better than it was before. We also recommend people can use pavers as long as they're just sitting on top of the surface and not taking up volume of treatment area. And that's a good way to kind of direct people to cross the systems as needed. Also, we find using spiny bushes such as barberry and wood rose is an excellent way to keep people out of the basins. Particularly dogs. People walk their dogs in these things, and dogs do their business and causes a lot of problems. As a takeaway, Regular maintenance is critical in these systems to prevent very expensive long-term or very expensive one-time costs of having to rebuild the system after any of my inspectors get there. Many of the species do great with no or very little pruning and no synthetic fertilizing. Also, GSI implementation is going to continue to grow exponentially in this area as the South Bay is redeveloping and developing constantly. Pretty much every new development is going to have GSI installations, and those requirements from the state are only going to get tighter, so you'll have more GSI to maintain. And also want to follow Big Friendly or restate principles to have a more sustainable installation, more sustainable landscapes throughout the city. Here are some useful training resources. City of San Jose Stormwater Program website, best website in the world. We're going to be putting the GSI maintenance field guide will be up there sometime in the next few months. Once we start rolling it out. South Bay Green Gardens, again, is a great resource. The SCVWD website, Santa Clara Valley Urban Runoff Pollution Prevention Program website, has some great resources on it as well. Again, also Restate California, the East Master Gardeners website, and California Native Plant Society, since a lot of these plants are native plants. I've spent a lot of time on all these websites, and they are very helpful. I'm going to leave you with this quote. Kind of like to highlight the fact that for much of our recent history, we've kind of separated ourselves from nature, try to engineer our way out of everything. And in reality, we are part of our natural environment. GSI is a way to reintegrate our natural environment into our infrastructure, and properly caring for and maintaining it is critical. And I think John Muir kind of captured that in this quote. If you have any questions, well, I'm going to take questions now, but if you have any follow-up questions, my contact information is up there. Feel free to give me a call, send me an email. I love talking about this, so I want to learn more from the landscape professionals on how, what you guys have learned or what you run into when maintaining these systems. So, thank you.
Nick, I really like the inlets, along the curb side. Is that a city requirement on all new curbs?
It's not a requirement. If there are bioretention areas or if there are stormwater treatment systems in, behind the curb, then typically they would have curb cuts to allow water to flow into those planted areas.
Right.
Sometimes we have them like if it's roofs, that if we're treating water from the roof, we would have a rain meter usually going straight into the bioretention area, or sometimes they'll pipe it underground and have it pop up somewhere. But curb cuts are the most effective and cheapest way to get stormwater where we want it to go.
On my street, it's a long dead-end street. There's one gutter outlet at the very end of the street, and so it's, the neighborhood's 60 years old. So a lot of water gathers in front of people's driveways, and some people broom it down and some don't. It seems to me there would be a program that would create those inlets along streets that have that, because I think that's very common in San Jose.
Yeah.
That would be nice to have a program that way, and so that we could be saving that water.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's coming off the street, but still it's,
Stormwater capture is kind of a new topic, or a newer topic to this area. And it's something that I think is going to start growing a lot. Problem is the infrastructure is very expensive. So installing like a green street where you're capturing that stormwater and filtering it and letting it infiltrate into our groundwater is extremely expensive. But we are making a lot of improvements going in that direction.
I'd split the cost.
I had a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi. Two questions.
Yeah.
I know you said that you promote using native plants in these areas in the GSIs. And did you work with the California Native Plant Society to get recommendations from them? as to which native plants would be a good choice in these
The,
detention areas, if you will?
when the Appendix D list was created, there was a lot of coordination with our partner agencies, and I'm not sure if they were directly working with Native Plant Society, but there was a lot of research done into what plants are appropriate for these systems, and that was not just locally, but that type of Appendix D list is also used statewide. Pretty much every jurisdiction has their own list, but for the most part, they're all pretty much the same. Again, there's like 400 plant species or something on it, but we found the list has to be changed. There are things that don't work, things that could work that aren't on the list. So that will probably be updated soon. That's all.
Right, and it would be great to chat with CNPS about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then my other question was, I've certainly heard you say, not to use herbicides and whatnot in these areas, but what about along street right-of-ways and in median strips? I mean, I see wholesale spraying
Okay.
on city contracts. I mean, thousands of square feet where there's nothing now but just plain dirt because they're using pre-emergence or herbicides of some sort.
Yeah.
And in my mind, not a good thing. So what is the city thinking about possibly changing the policy about that?
Can't really speak to that. We have an IPM policy, a integrated pest management policy, but it's extremely expensive to manually remove weeds. A city the size of San Jose, but I don't know the specifics of that. In our systems or anything that flows to our systems, we don't allow pesticides or herbicides to be used, and that's just for the stormwater aspects.
But if we had ground cover planted, or if we used
Absolutely.
mulch, I mean, then that would, help
Yeah.
with weed suppression. And I'm thinking in particular where I live, I'm in a special right-of-way landscape maintenance area, District
Okay.
15.
Mhm.
And so I pay money every year through my taxes for that.
Yeah.
And they just pull things out and spray chemicals and instead of actually planting plants. So.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to their budget and resources. Resources are a huge issue for every city. The last thing you want to see is some truck driving in with spraying green goo all over the sidewalk. So I understand, but again, I can't really speak to that.
Thank you.
Hi, my question is regarding the maintenance on, now that you've done 2,500 systems and you've done inspections, are there any particular plants that were on the plant list, like Carex barberry or Santa Barbara sedge, for instance, that you pulled, or any problem plants that are bioretention, especially for flow-through planters, that you would not recommend, that block outlets and curb cuts?
We find some of the fescues tend to die off and kind of become patchy after a while, but I think a lot of that is due to compaction. But most of the plants on the list do quite well. For example, deer grass goes crazy in bioretention areas. And we love deer grass. But at the same time, that's probably the worst. But that deer grass blocks and lets curb cuts and overflows because it gets so large. Ask my inspectors, have any plants that you don't like?
Think minor.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that's good.
His favorite.
Yeah, Nika minor, we find that planted in a lot of species and it's borderline invasive. So, yeah, but.
Okay, we're going to do one more question in the back, the gentleman with the mic, and then other questions. Nick has a team of ESD employees here that'll be welcome to answer any of those questions. Environmental Services team, raise your hands. Okay.
Brandon, raise your hand.
Okay, sir in the back.
Yeah, I work in largely the northern part of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, where they're building like crazy.
Yeah.
So I see a whole lot of these bioretention areas, and I know that there are requirements for maintenance.
Yes, there are.
Is there any enforcement? Has anybody come out with?
So I manage an enforcement team for the city of San Jose. My team's right there. So we have 4 inspectors. We go to the requirement from the state is that we go to every site at least once every 5 years. In general, we're finding 5 years is not adequate. So we're trying to go once every 3 years. At the same time, most sites don't even know they have these systems installed. So they're maintaining them just like they would any other landscape. They're hacking everything back, blowing everything away, and it's causing a lot of problems, which is why, unfortunately, we're ending up requiring sites to rebuild these systems, and it costs a ton of money. So I think the messaging, over time, the messaging is going to be better. So new developments know what they have, know how to properly maintain them. And all the other cities are running into the same issues where there's a lag time between enforcement and, or from when it's developed to when it's being enforced on. And in that 5 years, all kinds of things happen. We have koi ponds installed, we have decks installed, people have rip them out, pour concrete inside the basin. You find all kinds of crazy things that happen within that 5 years. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank Nicholas Ajluni.